Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio,
Tumwa, Iowa.
Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, folks, it's Jordan. Hope you had a nice weekend. We are now about 2 weeks since a used car salesman beat the Democratic Party for the second time in 8 years. So naturally, the response from a party, champions of the working class and all, the Democratic Party, would be deep introspection. All the rich folks that fund the Democratic Party and frankly, the Republican Party, but all the rich people that fund the Democratic Party, all the rich people who dictate what the candidates and the politicians do or don't do. Naturally, when rich people lose, they're going to do very deep, thoughtful introspection. Look at the numbers, maybe take the pulse of America to find out, how do we get back into the winning column? That would be the natural response. But a party run by cosmopolitan coastal elites going to go the other way. Before we get to that, please smash the like button, share this important video. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this. Also want to remind you, we broke a major story last week that we are still pushing. I got exclusive audio of a top EPA official who's been on the ground in East Palestine, Ohio for over a year. In that audio, this EPA official really let the cat out of the bag. He basically admitted that Norfolk Southern lied to the people of East Palestine, Ohio and Western Pennsylvania, who were poisoned after Norfolk Southern unnecessarily chemically nuked Ohio and Pennsylvania 21 months ago after that train derailment. In the tape, which you could listen to at our Substack, he also admitted that the EPA failed to warn residents of the serious health risks that might be posed to them as a result of the chemical petri dish that was dropped over their communities. Please read this story on our Substack. Please share this story and demand that the politicians in Ohio and Pennsylvania react and the rest of the media cover it, because we cannot continue to just abandon every sacrifice zone that is being created in America, every corporate sacrifice zone that is being created in America by the corporations being allowed to poison Americans thanks to their friends in the government allowing them to do it. Now, if you haven't noticed, there's been a lot of talk recently about the DNC race. There's going to be a new Democratic Party chair race coming up soon. Jamie Harrison, who is a former lobbyist, will be stepping aside. He was disastrous as DNC chair. And there's rumors going around that Rahm Emanuel, 16 shots in a cover-up. The mayor of Chicago, who covered up the murder of 16-year-old Laquan McDonald so that he could win re-election. The guy who was, other than Bill Clinton and Nancy Pelosi, one of the most responsible for the Democrats' shift to the right, neoliberalism, embracing free markets, and triangulation. Well, he's being rumored and pushed as DNC chair. And the rest of the ghouls and corporate Neanderthals atop the party, they went to Politico to push their message. Oh, no, the reason that we lost to Donald Trump, it's not, the new Gilded Age, stupid. It's not that we live in an economic Hunger Games, stupid. We're too woke. Centrist Dems sees opening at the DNC. I don't want to be the freak show party. Oh, boy. Centrist Democrats are revolting. By the way, they're not centrist. They're right-wingers. This is just how Politico likes to, normalize social Darwinists and corporate criminals running what's supposed to be or once was the party of the working class. As they begin to dissect their collapse in the presidential election, some Democratic National Committee members are concluding that the party is too, quote, woke, too focused on identity politics, and too out of touch with broad stretches of America. Those existential concerns, according to interviews with more than 24 DNC members, are shaping the earliest stages of the race for DNC chair. And in the absence of a formal party autopsy, blame casting among members about the causes of Vice President Harris's defeat. Quote, the progressive wing of the party has to recognize, we all have to recognize, the country's not progressive and not to the far left or far right. They're in the middle, said Joseph Paulino, DNC committeeman from Rhode Island. I'm going to look for a chair who's going to be talking to the center and who's going to be for the guy who drives a truck back home at the end of the day. Oh, boy. I mean, it's not surprising at all, but frankly, this is just nauseating. This is just kind of a replay of 2016, only without the Russia gating and blaming Putin for Hillary's loss. I'm sure that will come too. Well, when he says the country's not progressive, I don't really know what country he's talking about. Maybe on labels, a lot of people wouldn't say they're progressive, but on policy, they would. I mean, you just want a couple issues here. Voters strongly support raising the minimum wage to $9, $12, and $17. So, I mean, this is a recent survey that was taken from this year, April. There you go. Overwhelmingly, 85% support $9 minimum wage. 83% support a $12 minimum wage. 64% would support a $17 minimum wage. That goes up, obviously, when you just poll Democrats. Even independents, near 65% of independents support a $17 minimum wage. Almost 45% of Republicans support a $17 minimum wage. I think $17 is too low, but those are the numbers. I don't know. Is that too woke for the donors that run the DNC when they say we're not a progressive country? Seems pretty progressive to me. Hey, you say we lost because we're too woke, pushing cancel culture, using too many pronouns or whatever the hell they're talking about. Well, apparently, two fairly Republican conservative states, economically, they're progressive, at least on the policies. In this recent election, Missouri greenlit a union-backed ballot initiative to increase the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour by January 2026. This initiative also provides paid sick leave to workers of large employers. And voters overturned the state's near-total abortion ban. Alaska, also Republican state, approved the ballot measure to raise the minimum wage to an hourly $15 by 2027. I don't think it's enough, but it certainly seems pretty progressive to me. But we're told by the criminal corporate Neanderthals, and yes, I think a lot of what they do should be criminal. We're told that the country's not progressive. Country doesn't want good things economically. Country doesn't want big things economically. And again, at this point, I think a $15 minimum wage is the conservative position. But if that's what we're measuring it by still, country wants it. Pretty progressive, if you ask me. Oh, wait. The folks running to their favorite shop, Politico, to push their centrist bullshit, say we're not a progressive country, then why does the majority want Medicare for all? 69% of Americans want Medicare for all. This was in 2020. Numbers are still basically around that. If you look at more recent polls, this includes 64% of Republicans. Excuse me. This includes 46% of Republicans. So they said they supported Medicare for all. 88% of Democrats, 68% of independents, 46% of Republicans. The country is not progressive. This is not the analysis you're seeing on Morning Joe after the election. This is not the analysis on CNN. Somehow, not the analysis in the New York Times. We're just getting hammered over the head by pieces about we're too woke. The party is too woke. The party has embraced cancel culture and identitarianism. Hey, some of that might be true, but that's not why people voted for Trump. The numbers don't lie. And for a bunch of rich people, for a bunch of Neanderthals that have bought off the government and think that's just the price of doing business, they don't seem to know how to read numbers. Look at the numbers. I mean, it's pretty evident what this election was about. And it's pretty evident what direction the DNC, if they were interested in winning as the top priority, would take. In past year, inflation has caused your family, that's 75%. 75% said inflation caused moderate or severe hardship. Is that about wokeism? I don't think so. Exit polls, condition of the nation's economy. Look at that. Not so good or poor. That would be, by my math, 45, 55, 65. That's 68%. Say, condition of the nation's economy, not so good. Doesn't seem that that's about wokeism either. What about family's financial situation today? Nearly half worse than 4 years ago. Yeah, it's all about the pronouns. This is what rich, out of touch, elitists want to misdirect you on. This is what they want to distract you on. They want to pretend that, oh no, we're failing because of the messaging. We're failing because we've, been hijacked and been captured by the identitarian left and the pronoun people and the woke people. And, sometimes can that stuff go a little too far or become a little too much? Sure. But that's not the top concern of the single mother in Detroit. It's not the top concern of the union workers in the Rust Belt or anywhere in the country. It's not the top concern of the young person working 2 jobs or strangled by college loan debt. But when they're not getting the relief that is promised over and over and over again, the economic relief, the structural relief, yeah, maybe those things might be a little bit more irritating. Maybe they'd be more susceptible to a used car salesman's grift. Maybe they'll be more susceptible to a huckster, a grifter, a charlatan's beating his chest. I'm better, and I'm gonna bring back the jobs. They're all corrupt. All you need is me, which basically has been Trump's message forever and ever and ever. That's essentially what has been the last decade. Trump doesn't actually run on policy other than it's the brown people, build the wall, and, basically throwing in tinges of xenophobia and white nationalism to try and, make the masses, many who are struggling economically, to, nostalgically wax poetic for yesteryear when maybe one parent could work. Maybe you could take a vacation once in a while. Maybe you could have 2 cars. Those days are over. By the way, as they say, we're not a progressive country. I mean, you could go further down the list. The policies and the polls show on policy, yeah, most people do lean left. This is the new Gallup poll. 70% of Americans approve of labor unions. It's the strongest in 60 years. Strongest pro-union sentiment in 60 years. Paid family leave. Overwhelming support. Overwhelming support. 96% of Democrats, 82% of independents, and 76% of Republicans support paid family leave. But yeah, not a progressive country. And, just stop with the woke and let's get back to the neoliberal crumbs. If we just stop with the woke and get back to the neoliberal crumbs, we'll win again. It's absurd. It's just nonsense. Let me read a little bit more from this nonsense. The progressive wing of the party has to recognize, we all have to recognize the country's not progressive. I read you that. Or as one DNC member from Florida put it, I don't want to be the freak show party like they have branded us. When you're a mom with 3 kids and you live in middle America and you're just not really into politics and you see these ads that scare the bejesus out of you, you're like, I know Trump's weird or whatever, but I rather his weirdness that doesn't affect my kids. Well, here is the fundamental problem. My strong suspicion is whoever anonymously gave that quote has very rarely went to middle America and sat down with a mom of 3 kids to talk to them about what is their top concern, what is their biggest struggle, what is their greatest fear for the future. because it's not about pronouns. It's not about wokeness. It's not about, I don't know, Democratic Party, talking down to people. Yeah, that might irritate some people, but that's not what most working class people think about day to day. What most working class people think about is, shit, my electric bill went up $100 and my groceries every time I go cost $100 to $150 more. And I got to take my kid to karate practice, which costs money. Or I got to take my kid to, I don't know, gymnastics. Oh, the car payment is due, or the insurance is going up, or I just got this surprise bill for a surgery that I'm supposed to be covered for health insurance. None of that stuff has anything to do with woke. And to be clear, when I've been on the road, on the ground with some left activists, I have occasionally found, I try to be respectful. It's not a big deal to me, but I have sometimes found it a little much. Some of the, just identity stuff or pronoun stuff or this and that. But, I'm a respectful person. And if someone, if I'm in a circle and they want people to introduce each other with their pronouns, okay. I mean, it's not the end of the world. And most importantly, I'm able to see the big picture. That is a side issue compared to the real issue. It's the new Gilded Age, stupid. We live in a Gilded Age. That's what these people don't want to admit, because they're part of the reason we live in a Gilded Age. I want to play you this clip here because I found it pretty illuminating. This is from a recent show with Mark Halperin. He used to be John Heilman's partner. Then he got fired or got canceled or whatever because he did a lot of bad things with assaulting women, later apologized, now making a comeback. But he recently talked about the DNC chair race. Listen to how he specifies the donors and their role in all this. It's very, very, very illuminating, if you ask me.
3, the finance chair of the DNC wrote a letter to the big donors. The big donors get a lot of attention from the press. They're great sources and they're influential in the party. And a lot of them think they could run a presidential campaign. They're obviously pissed off because we've talked about this the other night with Steve Elmendorf. They were briefed regularly by the Harris campaign. We're ahead. We're going to win this. It's tied. We're going to win it. And so their return on investment was crappy. And they want to know, we gave you all this money and you lost and you told us you were going to win. So it suggests you don't have great data. And a lot of these people are business people who have great data in their professions and they want to know. So the finance chair wrote them a letter saying, we got to get to the bottom of this. We were shocked we lost all 7 battleground states. So again, that's a reckoning because the new DNC chair, the new DNC finance chair, if they're going to rebuild the party, they need these same donors to write big checks in 24, 25, 26. And right now, and this happens after the party, either party loses, they're not in a check writing mood. They're not in a Zelle mood or wire transfer mood.
Boy, oh boy. Couple doozies there, huh? Well, first of all, did you notice Mark Halperin, beyond just, his fall from grace, all the awful things he did admit to sexually assaulting countless women in journalism, I think lost book deals, etc. Now making a comeback, I guess, with a show on YouTube. Definitely a swamp creature, politically speaking. But did you notice he said the donors, they make great sources? Maybe that's the problem with political journalism these days, that our elite and esteemed journalists, their main sources are not the mother with 3 kids in middle America, as the donor mentioned, but the donors purchasing off the politicians. Those are their sources. So the very people that the journalists who are supposed to actually have the pulse of America, actually be taking the temperature of what's going on the ground with the worker bees, their sources are not the workers. They're the donors. Wonder why they're routinely wrong about everything, yet get paid so much more than the people who are right about everything. I digress. But when he said that the donors were pissed off because the data that they were being sold by the DNC, the data they were being sold by Harris's campaign was all wrong. Maybe you guys aren't as smart as your bank accounts would lead you to believe, because there's really very simple data. The only data you really need to look at. Here's your data. This is why a used car salesman, fake billionaire, who basically became a national phenomenon because NBC made a fake reality show glorifying him and making him look like some wizard business executive when he wasn't. He went bankrupt more times than I have fingers. His dad bailed him out. He would be broke if not for his dad paying off and filling in the gaps financially. Here is the data that might give them some insight into why Trump won in 2016 and why Trump continues to win. It's not just the short-term inflation, the neoliberal 40-year bubble that these donors who run the DNC and run the Democratic Party is popping, folks. Here's another one. Look at the red line. That's the top 0.01%. Then the top 1% in the orange. That's called a 50-year bank robbery. So yes, short-term inflation was top of concern. But if you as a party over and over and over, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is the same way. They're not doing anything for workers. And sorry, Trump's not going to do anything for you if you're MAGA watching. He's not going to do anything. Prices are probably going to go up because of his across-the-board tariffs. And he'll give tax cuts, but most of it's going to go to rich people. You'll see the small crumbs. He'll deregulate, and there will be chaos. That's going to be the next 4 years. Hopefully not worse than that. But what's so illuminating about this is the donors are pissed because the data was wrong. Well, maybe you should start, instead of this stupidity about wokeness and cancel culture and identitarianism, maybe you should kind of look at the trend lines over the last 50 years in America. Maybe if you actually looked at the reality, which most people, even those with jobs, because I know you only look at the unemployment number, you only look at GDP in the stock market to gauge the economy. Most people, even with jobs, are struggling. Most people are paycheck to paycheck. Most people are one missed paycheck or one medical emergency away from catastrophe. Most people are one paycheck or emergency away from eviction, homelessness. Maybe that lack of security, maybe that economic suffering is why fake populists and faux strongmen are able to come in and, fool the masses that it's the immigrants. Fool the masses that they're stealing your jobs and they're stealing your way of life. Maybe if the Democratic Party, in response to inflation, was more aggressive, maybe if Biden would have done what I said he should have done over and over again, which is use the levers of government to financially threaten the price gougers, he could have said to the oil companies, hey, we're pulling your $15 billion in free subsidies we give you every year. He did not. Why? Because Wall Street, which funds Biden and the Democratic Party, are the most heavily invested industry. They are the biggest investors in fossil fuel projects. So Biden's not going to go after big oil because his donors in Wall Street are the biggest investors. You go after big oil, you're going after your friends on Wall Street. He ain't going to do that. And smash the like button, share this important video so we can get this out to the masses. Super, super important to challenge and debunk the bullshit coming from the Democratic National Committee. But there's more. There's more to this stupidity. He mentioned this letter that the finance chair of the DNC wrote to the donors. Chris Corgi is his name. I've written about him and reported on him before. I mean, he was a massive donor to Hillary Clinton. He's a Florida real estate guy. Massive donor to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Basically has donated to every corporate Democrat you could think of. Was pretty tight with Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida. Big real estate developer. Here was his genius insight and message into why Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump. I believe Joe Biden did an incredible job for the American people and was one of the most consequential presidents of my lifetime. There is no doubt that his successful accomplishments, specifically on the economy and inflation, were not effectively communicated to the American people. Again, it's the message that's the problem. It's the communication, not it's the Gilded Age, stupid. I also believe that Vice President Harris was strong and flawless candidate who gave voters a vision that would address their most important concerns and had real plans and programs. Unfortunately, for almost 3 years, America felt the Biden-Harris administration was on the wrong track. I consider that to have been an unfortunate result of many uncontrollable factors and a lack of effectively communicating the Biden-Harris administration's accomplishments. Translated, the people just aren't smart enough to get it. The people weren't smart enough to get how good things are. Because I'm a real estate developer from South Florida. I've paid off the politicians with millions and millions of dollars. I paid off Hillary. Hey, Biden had a fundraiser in my home a couple years ago, which I reported on. We just didn't message to the peasants that, hey, those crumbs taste a lot sweeter than you think. We didn't message well enough. They didn't get it because we didn't communicate to them how good things are. Maybe that's the problem rather than wokeism. But it actually gets worse. I'm going to continue reading this Politico piece. Party officials are expected to wait until the next chair is seated, likely early next year, to decide on a formal review of the Democrats' failings in the election. But the recriminations over Harris's loss to Trump are already reverberating throughout the DNC and influencing members' outlooks on the chair race, the first step the party will take to chart its post-defeat direction. Quote, "This is basically a real rebuild job from the bottom up," said Donna Brazile, my old friend Donna Brazile, former DNC chair. Amid that still nascent overhaul, a wing of Democrats who believe the party shifted too far to the left is rising up inside the DNC. Oh, God. These folks, again, the party's too far to the left. I do think there's this whole sentiment that we just went too far out there on identity, and it allowed the Republicans to really attack us at every turn as a result, and that we just essentially did not focus on just the everyday issues of Americans, said one DNC member from California, granted anonymity to speak freely. "I'm not interested in anyone who is moving further away from the center," said Cindy Bass, a Pennsylvania committee member from Philadelphia. "The center is where we have to be." President Biden's DNC and his installed chair Harrison are by no means considered progressive insurgents, but the body has been subject to tactical shifts before. Following Clinton's defeat in 2016, party officials stripped superdelegates of much of their power in the presidential process, a victory for the left after a primary in which superdelegates overwhelmingly supported Hillary over Bernie. The concern is not just ideological, but is spreading to issues of identity. Even some of the committee's most progressive members say so. A second member from California, granted anonymity to speak openly, described a general hesitation to back a woman or person of color for party chair after Harris's defeat. This person added that view does not square with their own outlook, but they were not alone in noticing it. "I'm disappointed that most of the names I'm hearing are men," said Shasti Conrad, Democratic Party chair for Washington State, one of the only states that trended towards Democrats in 2024. "I hope we get some strong female candidates too. One of my worries is that one of the bad takes is the party thinks that we've tried more diverse leadership, and maybe that doesn't work." But here's the kicker, folks. One DNC member, granted anonymity to assess the field of potential chairs, frankly said, "It's white guy winter." Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my head. My head. Well, where do you even start to unpack that nonsense? And please remember, we are one of the few outlets, independent, that are going to be doing more than just 24/7 Trump for the next 4 years. We are going to continue going on the ground, covering stories the corporate and most independent media are covering up. But we need more funding to do it. So please sign up today, statuscoup.com/join. You could join us for as low as $5 a month. Let's zero in before we get to white guy winter and that nonsense. When they say, when they say that, I do think there's this whole sentiment that we went too far out there on identity, and gave Republicans, avenues to attack us at every turn because we didn't focus on the everyday issues of Americans. Well, there's a difference between messaging and policy. Since I've been paying attention to politics, which is about 20 years now, it seems that every time the Democrats lose, there's never a focus on the policy. It's all about the messaging. The messaging failed. No, the meat is good. The meal is delicious. It's that we're not packaging it right. It's not served up on the right plate. The restaurant decor is not, inviting enough for customers. The meal is good though. You just gotta, tinkle here, tinker here. Well, I'm pretty sure that most people, because most people do vote on the economy, most people do vote on their wallet. Yeah, they might be irritated by certain identity issues or wokeness or whatever. Maybe it's not their cup of tea. Maybe they don't understand it, whatever. Pretty sure most people, if President Biden would have passed a $15 minimum wage, might have remembered that come election day. Pretty sure most people, if President Biden would have pushed and passed a public option, which he ran on, most people might remember that. Might look at that over pronouns and wokeness. Pretty sure if Biden would have fought President Manchin and Vice President Sinema, who blocked the extension of a child tax credit, if he would have publicly shamed them and went on a crusade against them, pretty sure most people would have remembered that. Even if he didn't necessarily win, would have actually remembered that he fought for it, would have went after the obstructionists. Pretty sure most people, if Biden would have went after the true cause of inflation. At first, it was the supply shock due to COVID, but then it was over 50% of the inflation was due to corporate price gouging, which has nothing to do with supply or global factors. It's just good old-fashioned greed, and Biden did nothing about it. You think people would have liked Biden and Harris doing something a little bit more aggressive than sending harshly toned letters to fossil fuel executives, asking them pretty kindly, pretty please, lower the prices of oil, lower the prices of gas? Maybe if Biden and his vice president would have carried a bigger stick, would have threatened subsidies for the oil industry, for the grocery industry and farming, if they don't lower prices to a reasonable amount that is actually proportionate with market factors, maybe they would have remembered that, because it actually probably would have worked. Yeah, those companies, especially the oil companies, if they have their $15 billion in free money, free subsidies threatened that they get every year, yeah, they would have lowered prices. I say it all the time that JFK did this when the steel industry, U.S. Steel specifically, was price gouging in the 60s. He said, I'm pulling your submarine contracts. I'm giving it to steel companies that aren't illegally price gouging. U.S. Steel buckled in days and lowered prices. All of this is absolute nonsense. These ghouls and goblins at the DNC, they know what the real problem is. They know it's not the messaging. Deep down in their black, cold hearts, they know that the real problem is the Democratic Party has been providing crumbs for the last 50 years since its embrace of neoliberalism. So you could have white guy winter, but if that white guy who, according to these people, takes over as DNC chair, or that white candidate runs in 2028 against J.D. Vance or whomever it's going to be, and is doing the same old, and providing, the fantasy that you're just one tax credit away from getting out of this economic hellscape, these terrible economic conditions most of us are living in. If they don't run on a bolder policy on healthcare, on housing, if they don't actually take it to corporations, if they don't break up with the very donors that have purchased this government, making it the United Corporations of America, we're going to get the same shit over and over again and get the same gaslighting and distractions about messaging over and over again. And you might say, well, Jordan, I agree with you, but why are we talking about the Democratic Party so much? Let's talk about building a third party. Hey, I'm all for it. You know me. I mean, I've been talking forever. I think we need to focus outside of electoral politics. I'm not saying don't vote, but I think we need to focus a lot more on outside of electoral politics, outside strategies, including economic organizing, economic protests, economic boycotting. But we need to get real. We can't just, pound our chest and be like, third party, that's it. That's the only way. Well, you better come up with a plan, because we're seeing repeatedly on the local level, on the state level, and federal level, if you don't have a way to counteract the media blackout that is what they do to third-party candidates, if you don't have a way to at least prominently get on, big podcasts like Rogan and these others, break into the alternative media space, if you don't have a way to counteract the corporate media propaganda about you, if you don't have a way to try and get some media attention, if you don't have a way to raise serious money so that you could, neutralize the Democratic Party's army of donors that's going to come up against you to try and kick you off ballots and block you, then we're just kind of running, virtue signaling campaigns, because we got to win. We got to build a third party that can actually win and break the two-party duopoly. And all those things are a lot easier said than done. I don't have the answers completely, but you can't just run a third party and say, well, it's the right thing to do. Well, you got to have a way to actually reach the masses, which right now there's a lot of obstacles against that. But at the end of the day, the DNC is doing the same old, same old. I'm not convinced an actual progressive will win the DNC chair race, but I'd like to see who's going to run. This will be a real litmus test of where things go. But to be clear, don't listen to anybody. I don't care if it's the morons on Morning Joe or the morons being quoted in Politico telling you, no, the real issue here is we're just too woke. The real problem, we're not woke enough on economics. We're not actually woke, as in awake, to the actual 40 to 50-year inflation that has been crushing the working class of this country. It's called gentrification, which is also known as economic terrorism. We're not woke to the fact that there has been a grand bank robbery in this country, stealing the money from the middle and the bottom and just flooding it to the very donors that have purchased the Democrats and run the DNC. That bank robbery shown to you once more. Thank you for watching. Remember, we are funded by you, the viewers. It is very, very expensive to do real living on the ground investigative reporting, and we have way more obstacles and overhead than most other outlets. So please, before you start spending money on holiday presents, etc., please consider signing up for 16 cents a day. That's all I ask. 16 cents a day is $5 a month. We also have $10 a month. You can become a member, which is 33 cents a day. We need to build our membership if we're going to continue reporting on the ground. We spent a lot of money this year so far on the ground reporting, on a documentary on Flint that we released in April. You could check that out at flintfatigue.com. That's flintfatigue.com. We won awards for that documentary. Obviously, we were on the ground for Election Day. I was in Pennsylvania. Tina was in Nevada. We did a 3-state, 10-day reporting trip in the swing states in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Michigan, and Wisconsin. We want to continue investigative reporting. We want to continue on the ground reporting, but we need to be able to hire more people. We are pretty strapped and pretty stretched thin right now. So please support us if you can. And thank you for your support. If you already are a member and if you're a new viewer, please subscribe.